Girl Aisha, aka Geek XX Chic, and we are back with another review to The Walking Dead. This is for episode 10 of season 11, which was called New Haunts. And yes, this episode was about seeing the folks who decided to go back to the Commonwealth and basically experience it, how they're adjusting to this world that is very surreal compared to their own. And I feel like it's, we kind of got a good taste of that already when we saw Eugene and Yumiko and Princess arrived there earlier, but this is a little bit different, right? In the sense of now it's kind of like some of the real OGs are here. And the people that I predicted to be struggling with it are absolutely struggling with it to some degree. But as usual, they're just there to find out the truth, right? We know for people like Carol and Daryl, especially, this is not their first rodeo. This is literally like their fourth community that they have either come in contact with or been a part of. They know now that things are not often what they seem. They know that they do look the gift horse in the mouth, right? They don't just take things at face value. And already we see that Carol is right back into, spy mode like she was when she first got to Alexandria. Daryl, he's doing what he thinks is, his strengths, but he definitely has his eyes open. And then, of course, we got Rosita. We had a lot of her this episode. Actually, it's the first time we've had a lot of Rosita in a while, to be perfectly honest, but I'm not hating on it. But yeah, they're all kind of just trying to navigate in this new society because they've clearly been given assignments based on their strengths. And we got a little bit of a few of the other people like Connie and Kelly. And I always forget the girl who's Yumiko's ex, who are in the mix, but really we kind of focused on the people I mentioned before. And interestingly, like we're seeing that with, oh, you know what it is? I get it now. Sorry. Like, for example, let's take a look. I think I'm just going to take them piece by piece because it's a little bit easier to talk about each character than to kind of talk about the whole in this case. So I'll take Rosita first of all. I was a little surprised because I thought that Rosita would have been staying with Father Gabe. And I'm like, or have they broken up? Because it seemed like they were okay, at least, before everything happened. So I'm like, why would they not be living in the same place? But I keep forgetting that there is still like a very classist society going on here in the Commonwealth. And there are the people who have, done well and ticked all the boxes according to the Commonwealth. And they're kind of living in the nicer inner city where there's like yoga classes and ice cream and all that great stuff. Whereas the people who are still kind of earning their way up or potentially on probation, they're kind of put into, like, I called it the ghetto the whole episode because that's kind of what it felt like. They're kind of out in the cheap areas. And again, I think it's because at this point, they're not considered to be quote unquote members of society yet. So they're not being given the same privileges. And so I think that Rosita she's out there right now living in those types of conditions along with Daryl. Whereas I think that potentially Gabriel was put inside the city because he is a priest. And I think that certain jobs automatically give you a higher status in this society, which sadly is very much like the old world, right? People who have educated or perceived higher positions are given like automatically kind of a free pass into an easier life, whereas people that are not considered to be as valuable have to kind of work their way up. And so, in the old world, the world we live in today, clergy and people of the cloth are often given positions of power right off the bat. And the fact that, Father Gabe is technically a trained theologian, religion is still going to be a big part of this society, it looks like. And so he's automatically, I think, been given some station because of that. As we heard him say, he teaches Sunday school classes, etc. So I think that because of that, he gets to live in the city. But Rosita, even though that's his partner, she's kind of a grunt, right? She's got military training. We all know she's a badass, but is it something that necessarily gives you a position in society right away? Sadly, no. So it looks like she's probably on the outside, as it were, whereas he's on the inside, and they probably just, we already see that they don't really care about splitting people up in this society. So that part's kind of sad. But with Rosita, I think she is weary of this place. I think she definitely knows something's not quite right and that there's probably everything's not as shiny as it looks. But, she's got a daughter who I don't even know how old this baby's supposed to be right now, but I think Coco's still like looking at the size of her and stuff. She's still under a year old. She's still very vulnerable, very susceptible to being hurt or killed. And Rosita's first and foremost, priority would be keeping her baby safe. So staying in these walls and having the option to have Coco grow up in these walls, or at least get to a point where she's no longer in need of such constant protection, would be extremely appealing to Rosita. And I completely understand why she would want to make it work in this place no matter what. And we saw that especially when she was going through the exercises that she was being put through with the commander, whose name just completely slipped out of my head again. But, she worked, like we saw that Daryl was like, I want to stick with the people I know. I want to work with Rosita because Rosita and I have worked together for years, but he didn't understand the assignment, right? Like clearly the commander dude, like, he knows that these guys are probably very, very good at what they do, but he's trying to see if they can work together, right? Because there are people within the Commonwealth who aren't as skilled or who need that leveling up. And, pairing two people who are experts together is not going to help the group, right? It's going to keep that expertise in one place. So there was that. And of course, just also learning to work as a team, right? Like he said at the beginning of the exercise, it's about speed and teamwork. That's what I'm looking for. But Daryl, of course, went off, kind of did his own thing, basically told the other guy to go off and do his thing. And it's like, missing the point. But Rosita got it, right? Rosita understood the assignment. She worked with this guy, even though she probably could have handled all that on her own, but she realized it needed to be a group thing. So, I understand where she's coming from. And I think that she's going to definitely be resistant to doing anything that might jeopardize their time there or their ability to stay there at this point. Because I think from what she's seeing so far, none of it is enough for her to think that it's not something they can manage, I guess, while living in there, which is completely understandable. Conversely, we've got Daryl. We'll talk about Daryl now. Daryl is just being Daryl, right? He doesn't trust his society. He's not a big fan of being told what to do. He really likes being able to have the freedom to go and come as he pleases. And so the fact that this society is not about that life, they very much are like, you have to be present and accounted for, otherwise get out. We see he's already struggling with that. And as I just mentioned with the exercise, it came through again that he is a lone wolf. He's someone who's very much used to doing things his way. We already know Daryl can go off into the wilderness for years on his own without a care. Not going to work, right? In a society, you do have to participate to some level, right? And for him, again, I'm sure he would be more than happy to live out in the bush eating squirrel for the rest of his life, but he's got RJ and Judith to think about now. And, we see that Judith and RJ especially is loving it there. Judith, I think she's still on the fence. Like, I think, especially because we saw earlier in the season that she was struggling to get along with the kids inside of Alexandria. Like, the only person she was really kind of getting along with was Gracie. But even then, her and Gracie are completely different people in the sense of Gracie's kind of like this coddled, very insecure, quiet girl. Whereas, Judith's like, get me out there. I'm going to slaughter some walkers. Like, she's a badass like her mama, right? So even with that, she wasn't really fitting in. So I think Judith is looking at this community as a new chance for her to try to fit in with kids her age or kids close to her age and get an idea of what it's like to live this normal life that she is no concept of whatsoever. And as I said during the episode, I really wish that Carl was still alive because I feel like this would have been something that would have been great for him to help her segue into this new life because he does understand and remember what the old world was like and what it's like to come into a community new like this. And he could have given her some great advice. But anyway, that's not going to happen, obviously. But yeah, so I think she's kind of on the fence about whether or not she wants to stay here. But I think she wants to experience, like we saw her eating cotton candy for the first time. A lot of these kids are probably having a lot of firsts around some of the food they're eating and the experiences that they're having. So I can't fault them for that and wanting to experience it more, but I would not be surprised that, I feel like it's only gonna be a matter of time before Judith's gonna show that she is very different than these kids. She's not sheltered. She's not naive. And I think her trying to pretend that she is gonna get old pretty quickly, but we'll see what happens where that's concerned. And again, RJ's not much to say about that. Like, he's still too young to really know the difference. I think he's just enjoying having the safety and all the things around him. But I do love that Judith brought up Michonne and said, look, as long as my mom knows where I am, I'm fine with staying here for now, right? But we heard that they said once Alexandria is finished being rebuilt. So I heard that offer in the last episode, but I didn't know whether or not it was an either or situation, like they had to either come or rebuild Alexandria. But it sounds like they're saying that they could come and stay in the Commonwealth, and then they're going to rebuild Alexandria and give them the option to go back to it. But I feel like I said, that's just way too good to be true. That's a lot of resources, a lot of time, a lot of people. I can't think they're just going to let them go back to Alexandria and live and coexist without them. I feel like if they're doing this rebuilding, it's because they're going to consider Alexandria to be an extension of the Commonwealth. My guess is they're just going to turn into a garrison, honestly. I don't think they're actually going to let them go back there, but that's my theory so far. But anyhow, so that's kind of Daryl. So Daryl's in this precarious position because I know he wants to leave. He does not like it there, but he's got these kids to think about. And so I think that's why we saw him do things like he would normally never do, like when that punk ass kid was fixing his collar and being a little and then giving him the credit for capturing the crazed soldier. Like all of that is something that Daryl would never have done before, but he realizes that he's got to try to make it work in this society, that if he really wants to stick around, just like the commander dude said, which was actually a really good speech when he told Daryl, like, look, I respect that you do things on your own. I respect the game, but it ain't going to work here. Like this is not the game you can play in here. Different rules, right? So if you want to stay, you're going to have to make it work. Otherwise, you're going to be the one to end up getting yourself kicked out. And it means, yes, dealing with little a-holes like the governor's son. I have no doubt this kid's going to die at some point. I just can't wait for that moment to happen. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how long Daryl's going to be able to keep this up. But we saw already from the last episode that he at least stuck it out for 6 months. So we'll see what happens. But again, I think the motivation of keeping those kids safe is really what's going to keep him in check, no matter how difficult it might get for him personally. Then we kind of saw a little bit of Carol being Spy Carol. Love seeing Spy Carol make a return. She baking cookies during the day, but she's doing all that hard hitting back, heavy lifting in the back. She wants to know what's going on. She's not going to be blindsided by a community ever again. So she's still, figuring out how things work. And now she's in with little Mr. Smiles there. And I think that's a good thing because we know that she's not 100% playing ball with this guy, but she needs to understand what's really going on in this place. And he's the best way to find that out right now. But also, he's able to get her what she might need, which is, of course, getting Ezekiel the much needed surgery for his goiter. And I know it's not a goiter, by the way. That's just what I call it because I don't like the other word. But anyway, we see that she's trying to work some angles here. And I love that she's trying to save Ezekiel. Their relationship is quite complicated, but I do love them together. And I hope that no matter what happens, they get to spend some time together throughout the end of this season. Because I know there's a lot of people out there who are very big on the other ship with Carol and Daryl. And hey, they're getting their own spin-off anyways. So obviously she's not going to end up with Zeke, but I would love it if Zeke would get a happily ever after to some degree. I do hope that whatever she's doing does work and he does get his surgery and that he gets a shot at living at least a peaceful life, even if it's without Carol. But I do like the scenes together. And like I said, that's her soulmate, right? Like he just knows her so well. They know each other so well. And I really wish the show hadn't cut their relationship short. I don't know why they did it. I don't know if it was just for Carol's so-called development or maybe because they knew that this spinoff was going to happen. But I just feel like they're such a great couple. And it's nice to see a healthy, stable couple in this show, especially since we're pretty much the last ones that we had on the show. But anyway, it's interesting to watch how she's going about all of this. And I am very curious to see if she is going to be the person to kind of get behind the rebellion once she figures out where it is and what's happening. Because like I said, if there's one thing our group knows how to do, is to go into a community, figure out what's wrong with it, and then decide to take over. Yeah, we'll continue to keep an eye on her. Outside of that, like I said, there was a few other characters that were kind of very much peripheral in this episode. Connie and Kelly, that was great to see them again, that Connie is getting to do something that's in her element. I love the little flirting between her and Daryl. I know it ain't going to go nowhere, which makes me sad, but I do love seeing them. I mean, I love that Carol's even like, boy, I know you like her. Like, why aren't you doing nothing? All this time in here, like, hurry up and do this. Like, she disappeared for like 2 months. Showtime. Like, you don't want to, miss your opportunity here. But anyway, if we get even one kiss with these guys this season, I'll be happy. Even though, like I said, I know that they're not going to end up together. I would be happy with even just that. But anyhow, it was good to see them, see that, Kelly's got her hearing aid. So we know that her hearing is going, but that's very helpful to her. Something she would not have gotten if she'd stayed in Alexandria. And then we saw, of course, Yumiko's ex. She just seems like she's playing the game for now. We didn't get much of her at all. So we'll have to see if there's more of her being invested or not later. And of course, Princess seeming like she's settling in quite nicely with her new role. And obviously her and the commander got a little something going on there. I'm not mad at it. They're quite cute, but I feel like she's going to be pretty invested in this world as well, because unlike the other group, we already know Princess spent a lot of time alone. So I think this being in a community again means a lot more to her intrinsically than it probably will for everybody else in here. Notably, outside of that, there were some people missing from this episode. We saw no Eugene. We didn't see Eugene this episode at all. And we know that, he's kind of a huge part of this whole thing, but I saw in the preview that apparently the girl who played Stephanie is no longer in the equation for some reason. And that's obviously a problem for him because he thinks that's who he fell in love with. And we also did not see Maggie, who was a huge part of, the last whole arc of this season, but also in the last episode. So I think that there's a pointed reason why they weren't there. I'm not sure if we're going to find out why Maggie wasn't there yet, or if she even is in this community yet, but I really am curious to see how she's going to handle this situation because, like I said, Maggie likes being in charge, and the fact that the Commonwealth is not going to allow her to be that person in charge anymore, I really think she's going to have an issue with that. I think that Maggie is far more willing to rough it, as it were, and continue to scrape by with her son like she has been all this time versus being comfortable inside of a community again. So, but we don't know. We didn't see her, so I'm very curious to see where she's at and what her mindset is about this community, if she's even willing to give it a chance, or if it's just like she refused the offer outright, and if she is alone in that. So yeah, this was an interesting episode. Like, what is going to be the culmination point of this season? I'm still a little bit curious about it, but I feel like the fact that we brought in so much of the Commonwealth now and this new governor and her son, it's going to be something pretty interesting. So I am very much looking forward to it. So it was a great episode for me. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up, and we will see you in the next episode.